Okay, please keep silence. Keep silence, please. Okay, welcome everybody to this fourth session of the research seminar, the autumn winter seminar of this school. Today's presentation is going to be made by Professor Antti Rautiainen, who is currently senior lecturer in accounting at the Jyväskylä University School of Business and Economics. And the title of the presentation is Case Research in Accounting. I'd like to thank the Department of Accounting for proposing Professor Rautiainen coming here. And of course, I'd like to welcome and thank Antti Rautiainen for being with us today. Today's discussant is here, sitting next to us. Her name is Nora Muñoz, and she's also a PhD student in the PhD program in Business Management and Administration. So she will be the one who will start asking or making comments after Antti's presentation. Okay, Antti Rautiainen is, as I said, currently a senior lecturer in accounting at the University of Jyväskylä. He also obtained his PhD at the same university, and so his regular teaching is on financial accounting, valuation, and topics related to accounting in general. He has published a number of academic papers in academic journals, journals in the field, international journals specialized in the field of accounting, auditing, and management, as well as several book chapters also related to the same fields. So I would like to thank him again for accepting the invitation of this university, and I just want to give you the word, so please, you start.
Thank you. And welcome everybody for this session, and I'm, as was said, Antti Rautiainen from Jyväskylä University, and today's topic, as was said, is case research and case research methodology. I've done both qualitative and quantitative research, and as you know, it's always about the research question and the topic that decides what is the most suitable methodological point in a particular research. However, in every methodology and in every research type, there can be some good and bad things, good and bad elements, some difficulties, all of which we must pursue and try to overcome those problematic areas. Therefore, today I'm talking about case research in general and some development ideas to case research methodology in order to increase the relevance of accounting research, as has been called by several researchers. And this, by the way, the background building is the main building of University of Jyväskylä campus, and it's currently under renovation, but it's otherwise, there's of course a night picture, but this is, I'll have some of these pictures here hidden. And this is University Library, and also our agenda today. I'll be talking about case research and some case research examples and special types, then about relevance of case research, and perhaps mostly I will concentrate on relevance test in constructive research approach, which is a type of case research, and about how to evaluate or assess relevance in qualitative research in more general, if you like to generalize it slightly bit, although I am focusing on that particular research type. And this last part is based on a working paper by me and some of my colleagues called Perspectives on Relevance and the Relevance Test in Constructive Research Approach. Well, of course, quantitative research has been quite dominating in the field of accounting and economics in general. However, for example, in the journal Management Accounting Research, already in 1990s, about 37% of the articles were case research articles, so that it is something that you can consider if you get a good chance of making research where the companies show interest and you have an interest to some particular development project or something like that. Case research is usually empirical research with one of only few cases, so there are no large number of data, no large number of observations, or no large number of organizations. However, as we can see, statistical generalizations are usually not possible, but some new interpretations and theoretical propositions can be made, and these may apply at least to some similar organizations. In case research, we often ask why or how some phenomenon or happened, what kind of phenomenon we are facing, or how the actors in the organization, the people, are perceiving the change or something like what are they going through at the moment. These kind of mostly qualitative issues are under study usually in case research. However, to familiarize you with terminology, there can be single case studies where you have only one, let's say one company, but you can also have multiple case studies like comparative case studies where you compare two different organizations, or you may have a field kind of research where you have, let's say, 5 or 10 companies in the same area from the same area, for example. You can also divide or classify case research based on theory use or theoretical issues such as are we being descriptive, telling about historical developments, or just illustrating some theory in a practical context, or are we being more exploratory or experimental, even going towards theory testing at the end, or are we even trying to develop theory in terms of one case or a couple of cases? But of course, several theories and case selection types can be used, and there are some special cases of case study such as grounded theory, action research, and constructive research approach, which we'll talk about later. Other classification types of case research you might consider qualitative case research as the most common. However, of course, you can have some quantitative material in a case research. If you do a survey to the employees of a company, there may be 100,000 employees in the biggest companies, and you might still call that case research because it focuses on the problems of this one company. And then you might have both in some way in order to, you might find something to falsify some existing theory or something like that. Mixed methods means that it has aspects of both qualitative and quantitative methodology. Further, as Wai-Fong Chua, our honorary doctor, has written already in 86. In many research types in management accounting and several other fields, you typically have mainstream positive quantitative research kind of orientation. Then you have interpretive qualitative research orientation, and then critical qualitative research orientation, and so on. Also, you can have longitudinal case studies, and researcher can participate in to the decision making to some extent, and so on. And how much practical weight are you wishing to have with the results or the outcomes of the research? And as considering the time, case research may be a one-time event. It might include repetitive follow-up interviews, for example, and then it can be longitudinal in order to be, let's say, even 10 years of time or something like that. So how long is a good time horizon, and what can we call longitudinal? It depends, of course, because researchers in history might say that 100 years is not very longitudinal. But as far as we in accounting and in business studies are concerned, the good time horizon is such that it is enough in order to answer the research question. And for example, in the Lord of the Rings book, it is said that don't great tales never end. No, they never end as tales. But the people in them come and go when their part has ended. Our part will end later or sooner. So the researcher is part of the company's or the case development for a while, and of course will not capture everything in the history, but will capture enough perhaps to get the publication and perhaps something to benefit the whole company in the end. So we can't really say that qualitative case research would we'd be very interested about what is the number of observations, and can we generalize that, and so on. These kind of qualitative work usually can't be generalized at all, but as Goldenbiddle and Locke notice that they may still convince the reader that there are some issues or theoretical points that contribute to earlier work and may apply to other organizations too. And we don't talk about reliability, for example, in so much when we are talking about qualitative work, but for example, we could say authenticity, credibility and criticality might be good elements in qualitative research. And authenticity means having been there, being able to say that and giving an idea so that the reader can say that yes, this is the researcher has been in the organization, knows it, knows how they perceive the everyday life. And it's actually relates to this philosophy what for example several European researchers have done, for example, authentic experience and being there, Dasein by German tradition. Credibility, here we have the meaning of also that the meaning and the text is such that it's plausible for the reader, so the reader can accept the words and the meanings and the arguments that are presented. Criticality means that we should be able to critically evaluate earlier research and also critically try to improve earlier theories and assumptions so that we can contribute to the current research. This was the first part, and now we are going towards current situation. As you probably understand that we have already some snow in Finland, but the lakes are not necessarily frozen yet because the temperature is so close to the zero, so that the lakes do not freeze immediately like at the same time when the temperature goes to, let's say, -1. There's a lot of warm water basically there in a lake. And I will discuss a little bit about case research special types, interpretive case research, comparative case research, and we have examples of these, and then perhaps these other ones, and then finally constructive case approach. For example, interpretive case study example, and I took already from my own experience that me and Robert Scapens published in qualitative research in accounting and management a paper called Path, Dependencies, Constraint Transformations and Dynamic Agency, an accounting case study informed by both ANC and NIS, and as you can see, it already contains so much stuff that it's hard to describe what it means, but these are actually those theories, actor network theory and new institutional sociology. Some people will argue already that if they are theories or not, but however, you do an interpretation usually based on some background theory or some background idea. How do you see the behavior of actors in a company? It may be that in light of this theory, you might see here some points that relate to theory sections A, B, and C. However, if you look at this theory as in order to interpret the events that went on and the changes that took place, you will find that the emphasis is more in points 1 and 2, and then you compare that A, B, and C, and 1 and 2. Is there something similar or different? So that might be something which is called interpretive. You interpret the changes in light of some theory or some other tool to help you interpret your results. Well, that's basically about it. And then a comparative case study example, which is my pleasure to introduce, institutional logics in police performance indicator development, a comparative case study of Spain and Finland, where me, Elena, and Clara were studying police work and how police officers use or do not use performance measures, and how the performance is developed, how are they trying to improve their cost effectiveness, and so on. And here we had two quite different organizations, local police in Spain and the police department in Finland. It's different organization, different country, different kind of culture. Everything was relatively different, and still we were able to find the basic problem of preventing and researching, investigating crime and so on. And there are some basic principles or logics, decision-making logics that are similar, but somewhere there are also differences. So this might be, if you have organizations, a possibility to enter organizations that are very different or at least somewhat different, that might be a good point to study those differences and similarities. So that would be an example of comparative case research. Well, as I said, why a comparative case study? Highlight the differences and similarities and find out what are the basic decision-making logics, what is highlighted in some country and what is in another, and so on. We had interviews, internet reports, project work, discussions, almost everything. So we could actually say that was a mixed methods kind of thing. So not just purely quantitative or not purely qualitative. Probably we will go on to leave the opponent good time for her presentation later on. There are also other special types of case study. There is the grounded theory by Glasser and Strauss, where you start with no particular interpretative theory at all, but that's usually difficult and leads to finding out the same as everybody else has found while using those, let's say, common interpretation theories and so on. Then there's also action research, which started from Kurt Lewin from 1946. Actually, action research has gone on a bit after that, but there was aims to analyze the effects of a change on action. It was a project for I think it was some social work project or something like that in the original article, and how it affected some group that were mostly affected by the change and how it affected others, and it had a bit of a comparative research style also in that. And in action research, the research often participates in the development and change process, and if you go even further, that the researcher is even more involved in the decision making, then you are getting closer to consulting, and then you are getting also closer to constructive research approach, and we will talk those in a short while. The constructive research approach was originally presented by Kasanen, Lukka and Siitonen in 1991 and 1993, the English version in 1993. And it aims at building a construction, a new model or tool that works in the field, works in practice, is useful there, and also can be published. There's some theory involvement, theory development or something like that. And the theory development distinguishes constructive research from consulting, because in consulting you don't have theory, is not so important in that. And how do we know if something is useful in practice? Well, the constructive research approach suggests that we do a market test. There's three forms of market test being weak. The construction is used in the organization, or the semi-strong construction becomes used in many organizations, and there's the strong form where the construction improves organizational performance. But this is obviously a difficult thing to prove, that a new, for example, accounting tool actually improves the performance, because there are several other factors and things that can affect the organizational success and organizational behavior. And other CRA studies have been also made, and we have, for example, Eva Lapro and Tuomala, they are discussing what it means to use a tool in an organization. What if it's used only once? Was it still used, and so on? We could have more There can be several types of using, heavy using and only brief using. The classic phases of CRA or case research often are finding a practically relevant problem and finding an organization, obtaining general understanding about the topic, innovating and constructing a new solution or idea, and answering the problems, implementing the solution and testing whether it works in practice, examining the scope of the solution's applicability, for example, in other organizations, and showing the theoretical contributions in comparison to existing literature. And relevance of case research, we might consider practical relevance because when we are talking about contribution and applicability in practice, whether it works in practice, what does it mean? Practical relevance, is it just value like net present value or stock price increase or something like that? Often it is, and then however case research can have other important contributions. We might have academic contributions, some instrumental, very short-term benefits, new concepts, and so on. And we might have individual and organizational issues, also relevance might appear for the society at large, and that would be even more than the strong market test. Some innovations do not only improve the performance of the company, but also the society more generally. However, some of these relevance categories will be later used as a framework for analyzing the importance or goodness or the value of case research, especially constructive case research. Considering that academics and practitioners may have different goals in a case study and different ideas of what is relevant for decision making, practitioners may mostly need to assess the possibilities of making profit, whereas researchers may consider, for example, publication possibilities and so on. And relevance as a concept is somewhat ambiguous. It's not very clear what it means, if research is actually relevant or what it means to contribute to something. But there's the value relevance issue. Decision relevance means that an accounting number is relevant if it's capable of making a difference to the decisions of those using the information. Further, there may be practical relevance, which is considered a different concept by different researchers. It may be value relevance and decision relevance, but we have to consider that it's not necessarily the same thing always. But these several researchers have presented their own categorizations. And Nikolai and Seidel consider that relevance can be more, it can be conceptual, instrumental, and so on, legitimative, being able to legitimate decisions and organizations, give them credibility and so on. But I will not go into more detail here, but go on to our paper, Perspectives on Relevance and the Relevance Test in Constructive Research Approach by me, Toni Mättö and Kari Sippola. And the question is, how can relevance in CRA studies be assessed? And we will discuss that. And we are already, I'm revealing the basic idea that market tests may need to be accompanied with some relevance test and some analysis of the potential relevance that may be there, even if by some accident or external event the potential is not fully revealed, then we should still perhaps consider if there is even any potential and what happened to the potential during the research project. So what are the perspectives on relevance in CRA research? How should relevance be assessed? What implications will a multidimensional view on relevance have on CRA research? And this is about developing CRA case methodology. So we are not my main point here is that our main point is to improve the CRA constructive research approach methodology forward. And we are looking at retrospectively at earlier research where the CRA method was used. And as a synthesis of the literature review and aspects of relevance that I just mentioned, we are considering relevance not just as one aspect of value or as decision making as some other researchers did, but as something that has potential in several dimensions. And we have practical value relevance in the first axis. Then we have legitimated decision relevance, giving more support for the organization. Then we have academic value if there's possibilities for publications and contributions to science and society. And fourthly, we have instrumental and conceptual relevance. We might have improvements in throughput times or find new concepts and so on. So we might consider relevance of case research or research more generally even, but at least in constructive case research in terms of practical, how much practical value relevance can we get, high or low, if we can't say in more precise terms, and how much is this improving our image or something like that, high or low, and is there instrumental or conceptual issues that are improved if we are doing successful research here. Further, what are the possibilities for doing research, publications and contributions in a wider scale and so on. This is just the first approach, and we will discuss this a little bit more later. But as I said, there were several axes in that picture, and this diagram that has been drawn here can be called, for example, relevance diamond, and it presents the relevance dimensions of the research, or the potential relevance of this particular research. And we also studied an earlier research where a software project was made, and there was performance measurement indicators for defect correction process implemented. Also, of course, we can consider high or low, or from, let's say, from 0 to 100% of relevance if that is more helpful and easy to the situation at hand. Of course, the academic relevance, I'm taking this as an example in more detail, because it might be of interest to us and you PhD students as future academicians and publishers, what we might consider as parts of academic relevance. For example, we might already see some novelty or plausibility in the case and in the data and the context. If we have a very good case or very big data or something like that, very good, thorough data or a very special context, that might be a big plus, something positive for the value of the potential value of the research. Also, if the methodology part is very good, that is a plus for the coming article. And of course, if we are using theory in a novel way, it's also a plus for the publication possibilities. Then, of course, if we get results, if it's not always so easy to get, let's say, in any research, it's not so easy to get significant correlations, and it's not so easy to get very good answers from interviews that reveal something very new from the theory point of view or from some other aspects. But of course, then if we get the publication, it is already some indication of the relevance for the academic career, for the academic pursuit of knowledge and perhaps science in general. Then furthermore, when you have published, if you get cited, it may be a signal that your work really has made a difference. It has contributed to the society. It brings you. It has made. You have said something that has a longer term meaning for the science. Then you may consider legitimate issues. Do you get better image or prestige for the school? You might get additional funding. You might have better career development if you have publications and citations and so on. And furthermore, you might have academic implications, schools of thought, further development of this idea that you presented. And then, of course, the societal implications if it becomes accepted and benefits the society and so on. Obviously, a very difficult thing to measure in a pure sense of measurement. What we suggest is that we should pre-test the potential relevance of the construction, both practically and academically, as we have outlined. Academic relevance was discussed in more detail, and we had the relevance diamond diagram as a visual, like basic style of presenting the dimensions of relevance, and perhaps we could go even further to be more precise than high or low, but at least in some way these aspects should be considered even during and of course after the research project. And we analyzed this quality cost measurement system study by Kari Sippola, and the improvement to the measurement system was made. However, the managers really in that project they were interested to improve the quality of the software, improve the performance and so on, and the researcher was in a good position to get into the company and work there and affect the decision making and so on. The company had several development targets. The research was able to participate, as I said. The CRA approach was used, and a contribution was made. However, within the time frame of a PhD project, the market testing was not easy because of, for example, external market events. The company that produced this software was sold or something. At least some reorganizations were made, and some problems were with the financial position of the company. So this kind of effects, it's very hard to judge whether it is really used if the company doesn't even exist. There might have been a good potential, but then external market event may affect the use of this construction. So, in terms of instrumental value, less defects means less quality costs and repairs, and there we have the construction made a positive impact to the business. And academically, a PhD dissertation of Kari Sippola was made, and it was completed. However, legitimately thinking the new owners and the new managerial team did not fully support the new system, so there was a bit of a question what happened with that. In terms of value relevance, it's the salaries and the costs remain the same in the short run, and long-term effects are influenced by other market events, so this is very hard to judge. And of this we can conclude that managerial team support is needed, and expected value calculations and potential assessment of relevance or potential relevance is very important, especially in case of external events that preclude or prevent the actual market testing. We can't see the future values because the organization changes so much. And we might consider relevance as one potential way to balance the balanced scorecard. For example, we might have expected financial benefits and or losses in case of some events. And these 1, 2, 3 and 4 categories are based on the relevance dimensions, and we might have several performance measures there, but we might consider legitimate relevance, decision-making relevance change, and every other things in order to find out the potential relevance that the construction may have, and then the market testing comes only later. And to recapitulate, we suggest a new phase for CRA research, the potential relevance test. We could say we could have a visual or then some other high-low or even perhaps numerical assessment in some ways, and then we could consider expected value issues or publishing points or something like that, where we would have some measurability, even though not measurability in a strict sense of measurement. And finally, I think the relevance test may facilitate better management of CRA projects and case research and management accounting research more generally, and may be useful, at least something to consider during and even before the research project has begun fully. I had already some slides. Okay, then we support the assessment of relevance, we analyze the concepts, and we introduce new phase and offer guidelines for assessing the relevance in case research and in managerial accounting research more generally. Thank you, finally, and that's my part.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, thank you very much, Antti. And now we are giving the word to Nora, who is going to write an assessment of the presentation. So please go ahead.
Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for coming to this seminar. And I'd like to thank especially Professor Antti for coming from Finland here to Madrid to do this lecture. And it's an honor for me to be the discussant this time. First of all, I have to say that I had no idea before about what CRA means or what constructive research approach was in management accounting. This is completely new for me, but I found it difficult but interesting at the same time to try to formulate a few questions for the professor. So for the members of the audience that are not familiar with accounting, although many of you are, I'd like to mention the difference between financial and management accounting. Being the second one, the key area that he was talking about. Financial accounting, as you know, focuses only on financial statements. They are those are information directed to financial and external users, such as creditors, investors, and so on. Those represent past-oriented information, and they generally, you know that they generally need to comply with accounting rules that are mandatory rules. On the other hand, management accounting, the one that he was focusing on, measures financial and non-financial information to help people inside the company, managers and so on. So those are that is good information in order for them to fulfill organizational goals. So managerial accounting is more, instead of past-oriented, more future-oriented, and its primary users are not external users but internal ones, and it does not follow any rules. And one more thing I would like to mention is the concept of relevance. When I read relevance, I was not sure about what he was meaning, what he was referring to with that concept, because if you know, in accounting we always talk about relevance based on regulation. So together with reliability, understandability, comparability, and so on, those are qualitative characteristics of accounting information or financial accounting information. So I realized that he was talking about relevance more related to management accounting and management research. Then continuing with CRA, this constructive research approach, as I didn't know about this approach, I start from the beginning reading that paper that he mentioned about Kasanen et al. 1993. So as a quick summary, they said that constructive approach was a problem solving through the construction of models, diagrams, organizations, and plans. So it's like a construction of a model in order to solve a managerial issue. So while it is widely accepted in other areas such as mathematics, medicine, even philosophy, those areas use this approach, it is not very used in management accounting, and this is because we are always thinking that management issues are more associated with consulting, finding very difficult to publish the results of a relation between a company and a researcher. Just think about medicine and the publication of medicine results, comparing that with managerial results or managerial issues for only one company. So as a final remark, those authors, Kasanen et al., they argue that a successful constructive study could achieve the general characteristics of science. So they consider this approach as being scientific. Those characteristics, as you know, are objectivity, criticalness, autonomy, and progressiveness, as well as the requirements of applied science. So what it seems to me that CRA then is an inductive scientific method that goes from concrete business cases, so concrete problems that each company has, in order to create a whole theory or methodology of research. So moving to this presentation, the author bases the presentation in a working paper that he wrote. This is a paper that I think fits perfectly in the literature, and it links up with one of the lines of research that the previous author mentioned. Kasanen et al. Mentioned that one line of business that new researchers could follow was the relevance of CRA, which is the central argument of this work. The paper, I think, is very well structured, moving the reader from the very general topic of relevance to more concrete ones, such as the relevance in financial accounting, managerial accounting, and finally the CRA study. I think it's worth mentioning that they contribute to this line of research in a few aspects that he already mentioned before, by developing four perspectives on relevance, practical value, legitimate decision, academic value, and instrumental and conceptual decision relevance. Then they create a way to measure how to assess the relevance. So they design a graph, as we saw before, with four different perspectives in the x-axis and in the y one. So you can measure each paper or each project or each decision making along in those axes. Thirdly, once those four aspects were positioned in the graph, they built a diamond. So I think that diamond represents something novel in this study and shows a guideline of how to assess relevance to any CRA user. They also contribute by formulating that fifth phase in the classification developed by Kasanen, the phase that is right in the middle, which is called the relevance test. And I think, in my opinion, this appears to be very useful as it seems to be the link between the ex-ante phases and the ex-post ones. So that if you use this methodology to have a medium phase called the relevance test, I think it will be able to contribute to anticipate possible problems in the design before implementing that design. So I think it's a good contribution before completing the whole process and then realize that you have an issue before. And finally, it solves problems, in my opinion, which are important of publishing in the area of management accounting, as this approach interestingly creates science. Consider management accounting as scientific, finding the implication of consulting issues for both academics and practitioners. So they found a link between a problem that a company can have and a paper that an academic can write about. So having said all of this, it was hard, but I came up with 3 questions for you. The first one is related with the application of CRA methodology. So how can us as PhD students, how can we apply this methodology? You mentioned one thesis about CICOLA, I don't know my pronunciation, yes. Measuring quality costs. If we want to apply this methodology as PhD students, do you think it's easier to publish a paper using this methodology? The journals accept the CRA methodology? Is it a good idea for us to say, okay, I'll use a CRA methodology for my PhD dissertation? What is your opinion about that? If you have ever applied that methodology and you think it's easier to publish. Then my second question relates to that link that I think we have with this methodology between the practice for companies and the academics, at the academic side. So in order to use this methodology, I think firms or companies need to contact academics or vice versa, or academics need to contact firms. How is that process done in your country, in Finland? Who contacts who? Because I think it's a win-win situation, so companies win and academics win too. I'm asking you this because one problem that young researchers in Spain have is the lack of funding. So this methodology suggests a good solution, but at the same time, companies and the university here in Spain are not very close. So managerial issues, I think, are still seen as consulting problems rather than academic ones. And finally, Kasanen said that this CRA approach is scientific. So do you think do you have this same opinion? Is it generally accepted that CRA is scientific? How can, if the core of CRA is innovate and find a solution for one specific company, how can generalization be achieved? Maybe looking at other areas, or without saying the company that you're trying to help, or then you're replicating. What do you think about that? So how to apply CRA if you are a PhD student, the link, if it's easier, the link between university and companies in Finland, and finally, do you think that CRA, although it's a case study, if it is scientific? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Big applause to Martin.
And fortunately, she sent me these 11 questions in advance, so I didn't have to write them down just as now. And these were good questions actually, and these are something at least what the young researcher needs to consider when doing research. Starting from the application of CRA methodology, I was part in one public sector research where the aim was to improve the social work cost effectiveness, and we've made some suggestions. However, as some fields are very law regulated, then not all the ideas are not so easy to bring to practice. So there are problems, and this leads to the issue that even if you get a good access to a firm, it may happen that the company contacts you or you may contact the company. Both are possible, but still you can't get the publication because it's something that is secret or it's regulated or something like that. It can't be published. There are problems. It has been happened before. Even the classic, I think the classic student's t-test, it was actually not by anyone called student, but it was a man who worked in Guinness beer factory, and the methodology was a company secret, not to reveal too much and so on. And also publishing a paper using CRA is not necessarily very easy. However, it's a possibility and it has been done before, and so if you get a chance, for example, to work in a company and you don't want to forget your PhD hopes or something like that, there might be possibilities to do PhD work at the same time, even in order to develop some new tools and some new systems for the company that you are working in. And it's a possibility, and you must, at least in Finland, if you do a dissertation, not all the papers really need to be published. It may be that one of them doesn't need to be accepted and so on. And also in terms of funding, as was also said, in a PhD thesis, if you get the funding for, let's say, half a year, it's very short. You can't expect that you will publish in a large major European or American journal, do the research, write it, and publish in a journal within a half a year. It's impossible, basically, because the review rounds and everything will last a year or two, and that's if everything goes well. And therefore the potential relevance analysis might be good for a PhD student, because you don't really have to have all the papers published, but if you consider that your supervisors consider that there is potential here, then it might be that you don't have to publish let's say, the last paper of your article dissertation at all, but it might be accepted as an essay or some other writing as part of the dissertation work. I don't know what is the policy in Spain, but at least in Finland there have been situations where not all the papers are published. Then about the generalization of CRA research, it's problematic, and the opponent already suggested, is it the repetition and replication of an issue, and that may be a good point. If the same solution can be used in other similar or even in different companies, then of course it suggests that there's much potential in that solution. However, again, there may be the secrecy rules, the business may have don't want to give any information about its actions to anybody, and there are problems, but this is I didn't came here to say that this is the easy way to do PhD research, but it's one potential way, and it may serve some or at least few PhD researchers, and also later on your career serve you as a potential for doing both practically relevant issues and academically relevant issues, and that's I think rather rare in some research settings. And did I answer all of these? I have to check.
Yeah, I think so.
And yes, the final one, there doesn't need to be any conflict in the relevance dimensions, because you may have at the same time you may have a lot of practical relevance in an issue and academic relevance, so that these are not competing against each other. But we are suggesting that we should try to at least make research that research has impact on both practice and to academic publications and so on. And that's about that, but does anyone else have any questions or comments?
Okay, I think that Nora's comments have been quite supportive in general, I would say. So I wonder if there is anyone in the public, in the audience, who is willing to make some objections to case research and accounting, so that we have a more, let's say, a more critical approach. Some people from the accounting department here, so I wonder if they have anything critical to say about case research and accounting. I mean, in general, are there any questions you would like to ask to our speaker? So I hope that everyone has been convinced about the viability of this research line. So if there are no questions, so we simply close the session. So let me thank again Antti Rautiainen for his presentation, as well as Nora and the Department of Accounting. And let's give another applause to the speaker and the discussant. Okay, thank you very much.